welcome back to another episode of the Review Diaries. I am your host, Jackie Moore, and in this episode we are finally going to be recapping the first part of season 3 of Bridgerton. We have been waiting so long for this season, and I saw on social media already that part 1 of season 3 is already, I think, one of the most watched premieres of a show that Netflix has ever had. I think it's like up there with Baby Reindeer, which is also something that I watched recently that I have been meaning to recap just because it's so crazy, but won't be talking about that right today. It's obviously frustrating that we have to wait for part 2, but it just kind of is what it is, and they, I hope they stop doing this, but I don't think they will, because I know that probably it drums up ratings for them more and it builds up the buzz for certain TV shows, especially big ones like Bridgerton. And yeah, obviously it's disappointing, but anyway, on to the recap. It begins with a narration of Lady Whistledown saying, "Dearest gentle reader, we have been apart for far too long," and I thought it was cute because obviously it's like, yes, we have been like just waiting for this and we have missed this world like so much, and I love how they kind of subtly played on that, just being apart or like not filming for over 2 years throughout the episodes, and just how long it took for them to come back, because I mean they know like how long people have been waiting for this. I looked back at season 2 and it actually came out in March of 2022. So it's been over 2 years since we've been in this world, and obviously with the release of Queen Charlotte in 2023, we kind of were hoping that in that same year we would be getting season 3, but obviously that didn't happen with the inevitable delay of the writers and Hollywood strike, and they were not able to do anything, not even like plan or write, like literally everything was at a standstill. So it was obviously frustrating having to wait, but it's obviously finally here. So there's a ton of new eligible bachelorettes that are contenders to be Diamond of the Season and also just out in society this time. And so this is Penelope's 3rd season unmarried, and so she would be considered a spinster at this point. It is also the lovely Francesca's debut this season, and we now have a new actress playing Francesca, and her name is Hannah Dodd, and she is just beautiful, I have to say. I love her as Francesca from what we've seen so far, and I already can't wait to see what else we see of her. So obviously at this point, the actress that had played Francesca originally in the past 2 seasons had left the show. Her name is Ruby Stokes, and from what I saw online, she had left the show because she had gotten a leading role in another Netflix series at the time of season 2, I believe. And it was Lockwood and Co. And it was inevitably one of those Netflix shows that gains a lot of popularity and are inevitably just canceled within the first season. So obviously it's disappointing and sad for her because she had a leading role. So she obviously had to go with that. But I do believe she could have continued to play Francesca and a guest star, but I think due to the success of Bridgerton and just her getting a leading role, it was probably more appealing to her at the time, and who kind of knows how her contract was and if she was even able to remain on Bridgerton while being on this other show. And I mean, she is noticeably absent from the show in the first 2 seasons. I talked about that a lot, but I'm glad that we now have an actress who hopefully can continue and we can actually get to know Francesca a little bit more, which I feel like we have a lot so far this season. So the Bridgertons are waiting for her since it's her first time being presented to the Queen and her debut into society, and they are waiting at the door, and she is actually playing the piano downstairs, and Kate and Anthony are back from their honeymoon, so my precious babies are just making little appearances in the show. Colin is back from his travels in Europe, so he is the lead in our story this time from the Bridgerton family. So Penelope is walking around and kind of sees the Bridgertons walking out of their house and sees that Colin is surrounded by a load of girls, and I don't know, I don't know if it's his hair but I was just kind of like, there was something about him that just didn't speak to me like the other two leads of previous seasons. I also kind of saw people making jokes online saying that he had gotten a lip flip, which I don't believe is true. I don't know, there was just something that was off to me that I could never really put my finger on it as far as his appearance, because I thought he looked perfectly fine in the first two seasons, especially season 2. I thought he was just like fine. He just, you know, had to look a little bit older, I guess, but he didn't have like that sparkle that leads have, I guess, and I just didn't feel that attraction to him that I had to other leads. Nothing against him, because I have seen him like doing press and stuff, and I'm like, why did they not keep your normal hair? Like, it literally looks fine, and he is so attractive just like in his like normal life, and I don't know what it is about this hairstyle. I mean, he did lose some weight, I think, from comparing to last season, which is, I mean, it's been 2 years, of course, probably weight fluctuated or whatever, but I don't know. And they also let him keep his sideburns that I just absolutely, I hate sideburns. Like, please never, please, unless you're like Matthew McFadden and Pride and Prejudice, do not have sideburns. Like, no, it just does not work for me. But yeah, he is surrounded by ladies outside of his house, which was just also weird for me as far as like him as a character. I just felt like, I mean, he had always run off for the summer to travel and had never really gotten that reaction from anyone, or anyone had really ever acted that way when he came back, but more on that later. But he sees Penelope across the street, but he doesn't say anything to her, which obviously tracks with just his behavior of constantly dismissing her. But he also, I guess, kind of knows of her trouble with Eloise and just kind of like the status of their friendship, I guess. Also, another note that I noticed in my research, but we now have a new showrunner this season, and it is Jess Brownell, and I really noticed like a stark difference as far as season 1 and 2. So if you don't know, basically a showrunner is the top executive when it comes to a TV show, who makes all the final decisions and basically greenlights everything that is going to happen in a show. So everyone on the crew and in the writer's room and everything can have their own ideas and bring them to the showrunner, and they are the ones that approve everything. But I mean, from directing episodes, scripts, costume, direction that the show is going to go in, budgets, like literally all of it. And Chris Van Dusen, I hope I'm saying his name right, had been the previous showrunner for the past 2 seasons and left the show. No one really knows why. I tried to like find a reason, but there was no explanation as to why. And Jess Brownell was basically below him as far as her position in the previous seasons, and took over the show when he left, and I could really kind of see a difference in the show. Obviously the budget was bigger, and this is pretty nitpicky of me, but they also filmed the show differently. Like, I know that they get different directors for this season for every episode, pretty much, but it just was shot very differently, I feel like, from the last 2 seasons, and it kind of was like a continuity error for me a little bit. It kind of bothered me a little bit, but that's not really that big of a deal, but I'm just gonna have to live with it, I guess. At the Queen's presentation, the girls, like all the girls are coming in, and Queen Charlotte is just not impressed by anybody at all. She's just bored out of her mind, and no one's like sparkling for her, basically. And they also even had someone doing American Sign Language that was like walking out after doing the presentation, which I thought was a nice little touch. But Francesca is about to be presented, and her mother is obviously doing it with her, and she's obviously nervous, but she does like peek the queen's interest because she is a Bridgerton, but she's not wowed by her either. Across the room too, ladies keep making eyes at Colin and kind of like flirting with him a little bit, and he just does this god-awful wink that just made me want to barf, and I hated it. And Prudence and Philippa Featherington are now both married, and they have money again since Lord Featherington left, but the queen did not pick a diamond, and the moms are gossiping and basically just stressed because she hasn't done so, even though it took her some time to do it last time with Edwina. The ladies are just all over Colin this time. They are like all up in his business, which again, I just found so odd because he had never had this reaction before. I mean, he's been out in society for years, and he doesn't even intend to find a wife this season, he has said, or has made any inkling to do so. And I mean, it could just be his like glow up, or I guess, but I think the show was just making it too obvious in the beginning, in my opinion, that it was his season or he's the lead for some reason. But I don't know. Penelope kind of sees him talking to a group of girls and is obviously upset, but she bumps into Eloise and Cressida Cowper, who are suddenly great friends, which I was just kind of like, does Eloise like not remember that Cressida basically like almost ruined her family and her sister's reputation because she was just purely jealous that the prince was after Daphne? But I don't know. They basically said that they like had spent some time together over the summer and that they got along. But I'm like, do you not remember like how horrible she was? But whatever. I just don't understand how they became friends, and also just like the kind of person that Cressida is fundamentally is not really someone that I imagine Eloise like getting along with. Thankfully, her mother Violet also says that she doesn't understand this new friendship and just basically says that she's not gonna interfere. Knock some sense into your daughter, please, because this is like not really, I think, a good friendship to have, but that's not my business. It's basically, after this, a compilation of Colin talking to a load of girls that was altogether just a bit cringe, in my opinion. His dialogue was cringe, and he just was trying too hard, and something about it just didn't sit right with me. But Colin walks up to Penelope for a conversation, and she kind of just brushes him off, and I was like, good for you, by the way, because she had never really done that before, and I was proud of her. But Prudence and Philippa learn that whoever produces an heir first is going to inherit their estate. And as they are leaving, their mother tells Penelope that it's a comfort to her that Penelope is always going to be there to take care of her. But I was just kind of like, come on, don't write her off quite yet. Just give her some time. Penelope goes to the modiste and basically says that she wants a wardrobe change because she is now determined to find a husband this season. She cannot remain in her house any longer, and she tells her to fashion it as they wear dresses in Paris. So basically trying to appeal to Colin, obviously, but I thought it was nice. We have yet another Mondrich subplot, and at this point, I'm like, why are we even doing this? I hate to sound like a hater as far as like their characters go, but I'm just bored of it. I'm not interested. Her aunt has now died and left our son Nicholas everything, so he is now a baron. And I just don't understand why they're adding this plot, or how they were even really associated with anyone in the world and how they relate to it, because Simon is not there anymore, and he was the one that was friends with Simon, and really the only thing associating him in the world is this gentleman's club that he has. But I'm like, it's a very minor thing. I'm like, are there not other gentlemen's club in London? And Kate and Anthony are recently married and trying to make an heir, so it is, of course, Lady Danbury's inaugural ball tonight, and Penelope has her new look ready to try out, and she just looks stunning. And I love that they gave her this look because it just really suits her. The colors that they gave her, it really suits her hair color and just the hairstyle, makeup, everything. I just really loved it. But she arrives wearing a cloak, so it covers the dress that she is wearing, and she reveals it, and it's this beautiful just green color, and everyone just stares at her, and she looks stunning. So I'm like, yes, please take notice of her because she needs it. So Colin sees her, and it kind of shakes him up a little bit, and men approach her to talk, and she is flustered and nervous and kind of makes it a little bit awkward. I mean, she's not really used to being approached like that, or even anyone really taking notice of her, so I can imagine that she doesn't really know how to approach these conversations really, and everyone previously kind of has always made her and her family seem like they're a joke, so I imagine it's probably a lot for her to get used to. But Eloise notices her from across the room, and Queen Charlotte also takes notice of her and asks Lady Danbury about her. And then in the meantime also, men are approaching Francesca and ask her a lot about her hobbies, and she says that her hobby is the pianoforte, and they start asking her a ton of questions that she kind of evades and leaves because she just really would prefer to just have a moment alone. And so it's a lovely scene after this with Francesca and Penelope that I loved, and I honestly was wishing that these two like became friends more because I feel like they understand each other more, and they, you know, talk about how different they are from their siblings. And Francesca says that even though she's different, that she loves her siblings in their own way. And so after this, Penelope is eating some ice cream when Lord Debling approaches her, and so immediately the conversation with them is more natural. She's not as awkward with him, and obviously Cressida steps on her freaking dress and rips it open, and she makes a comment about how like the fabric is cheap and therefore that's why it ripped. So Eloise just like literally stands there and doesn't say anything, and I'm like, come on, like literally say something. Like, I know that she pissed you off, but like what she did is really shitty. But Penelope basically runs out, and Colin follows after her as she is waiting for her carriage, and she's like, don't mock me, and he asks her what's wrong, or like what's wrong between them, and she's pretty cold, but he says that he misses her. And so she tells him that she overheard him last season about him never wanting to ever court her, and says that he is actually like very cruel, which honestly I loved for her. I mean, she's never really been one to stand up for herself, and she's kind of always like fallen into the background and kind of let people laugh at her and her family for ages. But I like that she is speaking up for herself now. After this, someone working for the crown visits Lady Featherington and warns her that there will be trouble if they find out that the document granting the estate to her daughters once the siren heir is in fact forged. And nothing so far has developed from that, from the episodes that we have seen, but we will see how that pans out. But Kate and Anthony decide that they are going to extend their honeymoon so they can focus on making an heir, and this is the last that we see of them this season so far, which was upsetting to me. I know that from the trailer from part 2 we do see glimpses of them, but I hope that they don't just disappear from this world because I really love them and would like to see more of them. So it's obviously the next morning, so Violet asks Francesca how she enjoyed the ball, and she says that it was like satisfactory, that it was literally fine. So Violet of course is concerned that her daughter is not going to find a match, but Francesca says that what her and her parents and her siblings have is rare, and that she's just going to focus on that if it happens, and she's not going to force anything. So Colin goes to see Penelope, and he says that he is in fact not ashamed of her, and that he is sorry for what he said, and that he is proud to call her his friend. He basically says that he can help her find a husband, that they can do lessons to help her find a match, and that he wants to do this to win her approval back as her friend. And so a column that she had written basically talks about Colin, and it says that he has like basically a new personality, and wonders if it's really him or if it's just for attention. So he basically says that if he ever finds out who Lady Whistledown is, that he will ruin her life, which, I mean, at the same time, I was like, Lady Whistledown's been talking about your family, like, for the past 2 seasons, and just now, because you're mentioned, you're determined to ruin her life. I was like, okay. But whatever, not my business. The Mondriches are adjusting to their new life now that their son is a baron. They basically live in this massive estate now, and Mr. and Mrs. Mondrich have to live in separate bedchambers, yada yada yada. Penelope and Colin meet up to discuss the terms of their plan and how they are supposed to start their lessons to help her, like, find a match. So Colin introduces Penelope to a group of men, and of course she is awkward and nervous and just kind of ruins it, which I found adorable. I mean, I've always kind of related to Penelope in a lot of ways, but especially during this season, since we see more of her. And so Lady Danbury has, for some reason, tasked herself this season with helping Francesca into society and basically helping position her as the diamond of the season, which I didn't understand, but I was like, okay, go off. And the Featheringtons and their mother are basically discussing what's going on in their marital bed with their husbands, and as their mother is keen that one of them produces an heir soon so they can basically take control of their estate now. Okay, and this is one of the major things that I had a major issue with, because at least for me, it just seemed very out of character. So Colin is suddenly frequenting and sleeping with prostitutes now, which seemed like he had never done in the past before. I mean, even when it came to the Marina situation and her making advances at him to sleep with him for, like, the pregnancy and all that stuff, he had said that he was a gentleman and that he would not disgrace her in any way. And I get that, like, these are prostitutes, and, like, it's like a different situation, but at the same time, it's like, you could have been doing this, like, a long time ago, and, like, suddenly now you're just going to whorehouses, like, all the time. And it was also, like, never mentioned that he had been really sleeping with a ton of women while traveling. Like, maybe if it was implied, it wasn't, like, super clear to me, in my opinion. So seeing him now back home with a glow up and all these girls in town are just, like, suddenly all over him, and he's basically being, like, a slut, I was like, what? I was like, I don't know if I just didn't understand this choice or if it just kind of went over my head from the past 2 seasons, but if anyone agrees, please let me know. Penelope says to Colin that she wants a husband so she can have her freedom, presumably from her family, but she also says how much she just values her privacy, of course, because of Lady Whistledown. Another scene with the Mondriches, and I'm sorry if it seemed like I'm hating on them a lot this season, but I just don't get the point of giving them so much screen time. They just don't seem relevant to me as far as the story, or even giving them a subplot takes so much screen time away from other characters that we were supposed to be focusing and building on. I mean, we're already seeing so many storylines this season because we're focusing on Francesca and her struggles in society, which is fine because she's a Bridgerton, and the Featheringtons have always just kind of been a huge side plot because of their relationship with the Bridgertons and the fact that Penelope is Lady Whistledown and that this is her season. So I get, like, how they have been, like, really heavily involved in everything. So, like, that makes sense to me. And even Cressida Cowper, like, she has more of an importance to me as far as the plot because she's been basically an antagonist since the first season. So seeing more of her makes sense to me, but not them. I just don't see why they're giving them so much screen time. They are basically new money, and I just don't get it. And so, yeah, she is basically at the modiste getting all her dresses altered because of their, like, all this newfound money that they have. And yeah, next. So Francesca basically expresses that her only interest in being out in society is to be married, and she is hoping to be done with all of the frivolous aspects that are like just going to balls and being social. So Penelope goes to the Bridgerton house for lessons with Colin, while Eloise is out and is being paranoid about seeing her, but he says that she has to practice on him, and she expresses how she basically word vomits when she's nervous and that she probably doesn't seem like the most articulate person, and he says that she should imagine him to be an actual suitor. So she basically recites poetry to him and says that his eyes are like incredibly blue, and it was cute. So they have this little moment before they notice that Eloise is back in the house. So he hides her in the study, and she finds his journal in the study and she reads it. So he basically talks about his like romantic escapades while they were traveling, and he comes into the room and is angry that she has read his journal, and so they knock a candle over or something and glass breaks. So as he's picking it up, he cuts his hand, and it's a whole thing where she like tries to cover it with a handkerchief, and they hold hands for like an obscenely long amount of time, and she tells him that his writing is beautiful. And then as she is leaving, her and Eloise like kind of see each other, but they don't say anything. Another Mondrian scene that I'm not really going to get into. It's like just her literally getting ready for a ball, and I'm like, I don't care at this point. It's just, why give them 30 seconds of screen time at all? For what? 30 seconds of a scene where she discovers that this lady had like a ton of jewelry that is hers now, and she's getting ready for a ball. For what? Like, how is that relevant or important to what's going on? I'm just not gonna talk about them at all, really, unless they bring something of substance to this season, because they honestly just bore me and I'm over it. I don't understand it. But basically, while on their way to the ball, Eloise and Colin are discussing Penelope, and Eloise asks how she is, which I'm like, if you're so concerned, literally just ask her yourself. But come on, like, they could clearly talk their issues out if they wanted to, but Eloise is just determined not to do so, and Colin tells her that she wants to find a husband and that he is helping her. And also, why was this ball scene so dark? I hated it. Like, it was only lit by candles around the room, but no like overhead chandeliers like with massive candles or anything, and it just looked really odd and spooky, to be honest, because I mean, they had never had a ball scene this dark, and it goes back to this new showrunner thing. And honestly, again, lack of continuity, because what was the reason for it being this dark? Was that the theme of the ball? I don't know, but they've never had one be lit this dark, and they so clearly like know how to work the lighting as far as the candles go and make it seem like it's very well lit when they're supposed to just be using candles because of the time period. Unless it's a theme of a ball, I don't understand why it's done intentionally. Like, it's not Game of Thrones. It's not like some battle scene that it's out in the wilderness and we can't see anything. But also, I could clearly see that they were fake candles the entire time, and it just irked me. It took me out of it like so much because they weren't like moving. At least in Game of Thrones, you can see like that the candles are real when they're being lit. But I know that probably for like practical and safety reasons, it was obvious that they were fake, but it just irked me. I don't know. And Lady Featherington was honestly the icon of this season for me. To be honest, like, her on her quest to make sure that her daughters get pregnant and everything was just, it was just everything to me. She has temporarily dethroned Lady Danbury for me, who was just really not giving as much this season, which was disappointing for me, to be honest. But Francesca is introduced to a musically inclined suitor by her mother, so they have that to talk about. But Francesca is really pretty technical and analytical when it comes to music, and she really only focuses on chord progression and not the emotion that music gives, which I thought was an interesting take. This is the most iconic scene this season, to be honest, and it was when Philippa tells her mother that her and her husband laid in bed together before they came to the ball. So Portia, their mother, obviously misunderstands and thinks that she means that they had sex before they came, and tells her not to announce it so loudly, and she takes them away into a room so they can discuss it privately. And Prudence says that she doesn't really enjoy it that much, so her mother is basically like, well, you know, it's different for like a man and a woman. And she's like, well, when he like inserts himself, and Philip is like, inserts himself? Like, what do you mean? Inserts himself where? And their mother is like, what do you mean where? What is it that you do when you lie together? And she's like, we kiss and we cuddle, and then he makes this like weird noise and he has to like change his pants afterwards. And I'm like, like, come on. We don't want another Daphne situation. Please educate your children about what happens in the marital bed. Please, we don't want another Daphne situation. Everyone at this point has basically heard that Colin and Penelope are basically in cahoots to like help Penelope find a husband, and are gossiping about it, and literally like in front of them. So Penelope runs off, and Eloise tells Colin that she told Cressida. So it's assumed that Cressida was the one that told everyone about this rumor. So Lady Danbury sneaks the queen off to a back room where Francesca is playing the pianoforte, and she's playing beautifully, and the queen loves it, and she says that it is lovely because she's doing it for herself and not for performance, and she says that she is sparkling, if she must say. So Cressida was not actually the one who spread the rumor about Penelope and Colin, but another lady who overheard the conversation. And so after that, Colin goes to visit Penelope to see if she is doing okay after everyone found out about the rumor. And Penelope asks Colin if he can kiss her. And I'm like, girl, stand up. I'm so freaking serious. Like, I know that she's upset and that she thinks that basically she has no chance at love or anything, and that she says that she could like die tomorrow and without ever like being kissed. But I'm like, come on, do not beg this man to kiss you. But he does anyway, and so after they kiss, you can kind of see that he like somehow freaking realizes that he has feelings for her, or it kind of like shakes him up a little bit, and it just frustrated the fuck out of me, because she's been there for him every single time, like since the beginning, and she had to like have a glow up and basically beg to be kissed for him to realize it and do something about it. It just, honestly, just with how he had treated her in the past, and I really wanted her to give him like more grief, and she really only did for like one episode, and it wasn't even like really that much grief. She kind of like told him off, and only because she overheard what he said, and I don't know. But basically we have this dream sequence where Colin is basically telling Penelope that his thoughts have been consumed by their kiss, and then they kiss again, and it's this beautiful, beautiful scene. It's very romantic, a lot of flowers, candles, all that stuff. It's even like a little bit steamy, but he wakes up out of his sleep covered in sweat, pretty pensive, like once he like wakes up and realizes. So he goes down to meet his family, and they all kind of notice that he's acting a little bit weird, but he just kind of plays it off. Eloise goes to visit Penelope and basically says that what Whistledown wrote was harsh, and then it must not have been nice to have something written about her. So Penelope tries to make her stay a little bit longer, but she says no, and you can see that this is kind of like hard for both of them. I mean, they're both emotional and obviously miss their friendship, but she eventually just kind of leaves. And Penelope and Colin meet underneath this tree so that no one can spot them in town, and his hair looks literally awful. I don't know why they made him keep this hairstyle. Like I said before, I saw videos and pictures of him doing press with his like normal hair, and he had a beard on too. And I was like, he literally looks fine. But I don't know. It just does not suit him at all. And basically Penelope says that they have to distance themselves so she can focus on serious suitors, but he's all flustered and awkward, and I was like, come on now. I just don't buy it. But he was so totally fine when talking to other women and that just don't know him, and then Penelope, who has basically known him his entire life, suddenly just flusters him because they kissed. What? Like, come on. Lord Debling strikes up a conversation again with Penelope, and there's a little spark there, and you can see that they both kind of feel comfortable with one another. And I actually find him like to be pretty sweet. Like, I don't know how other people feel about him, but I actually enjoyed him. And I feel like he could really give Penelope like a pretty nice life if she wanted to. But of course, Cressida also has her sights set on Lord Debling. So she tries to talk to him, but they don't really have much in common. And all he really wants is to be away from society, to be able to travel. And he doesn't really get along with his family. But he pulls Penelope over as she is walking by, and Cressida interferes by talking about birds, and this is also just one of Lord Debling's passions in life. And we have the dreadful hot air balloon scene. It's basically pretty windy where they are, and this hot air balloon is being set up, and one of the ropes manages to get loose from the balloon because Prudence's husband is kissing her, and they are like kind of hiding away from the crowd so that no one can see them, but this old man spots them, and she pushes him off, and he kind of like lands on one of the ropes and like manages to like uncoil it, and the balloon starts to like move away and like kind of rise up from where it's like set up, and it's heading towards the crowd that are in front of it. And that crowd being Penelope, Cressida, Lord Debling, and Eloise. So Colin, in a moment of heroicism, enlists like all the men to help him pull the balloon as everyone kind of moves away from it coming towards them. And Penelope, of course, is frozen in shock as it's making its way over to her, and she like literally trips and falls on the ground, and Debling basically spoons her to like protect her from this hot air balloon. Very unnecessary, too dramatic for what it actually was. Like, girl, come on, like, just move. But Cressida feigns an injury to gain Lord Debling's attention after this, and so as they are entering another ball, Violet drops a handkerchief or something of the sort, and the most beautiful man I have ever seen in my life picks it up for her, and it turns out that it is Lady Danbury's brother, but he picks it up and hands it to her. So I am all over Violet getting a little romance and some spice this season, because I'm like, girl, get after it. That man is beautiful. But girls are basically fawning over Colin because of the hot air balloon, and I'm like, stand up, girls, it's a hot air balloon, like, it's not that big of a deal. But Cressida's sleeves seem to just get bigger and bigger by the second, but the ones in this scene were just incredible. They were just like massive. And Francesca is having a little flirtation with Lord Samedani, who was introduced to her by the Queen, but she kind of gets overwhelmed and just walks off, the poor thing. And as she is outside having a little moment to herself, the precious Sir John Sterling comes up, who also just needed a little moment of peace and quiet. And he literally says, you guys, I literally like almost like fell on the floor. He's like, well, maybe we can enjoy the silence together. Are we kidding right now? It's literally them just standing next to each other, stealing little glances at one another, complete silence. And it's the most adorable thing to grace my screen in ages, and I was loving it. Basically, at the air balloon thing, Benedict had met Lady Tilly Arnold, who is this incredibly intelligent lady, very beautiful, and she's also a widow, and they have quite the bit of chemistry, and I am so ready to kind of see him have a little romance, since he hasn't since his last stint with the modiste in the first season, but they have a little dance together, which I thought was lovely. And Penelope is kind of honest with Lord Devling at this point about what actually interests her. So instead of trying to appeal to what he likes to do, and he says that he's not really looking for somebody that is exactly like him, but someone who is original and embraces who they are, which seems to be Penelope. And it's a cute little moment between them, but Colin is about to ask Penelope something, presumably if she has feelings for him, when Lord Devling interrupts them so they can dance together. And Colin pouts about it and is basically crying, and I'm like, get a grip. Like, you literally waited so freaking long. It's like, come on, get over it. The next morning, Lord Devling calls on Penelope at her house and brings her a plant so that she can put it on the windowsill that she likes to usually sit on. And he asks her why she likes to sit there so much, and we know it's because she's trying to see if Colin ever, like, walks by there or whatever, but she plays it off and says that she has outgrown the windowsill. And Francesca also has a caller this morning, and it is Sir John Sterling, and her family is obviously confused since they didn't see them meet or anything, but the poor thing is very excited and happy that he came to see her. And so they sit down together and don't say anything, which is just the cutest thing. And her family is looking at them like they have 3 heads or something, because they just don't say anything to one another. But Lord Samadani, another caller, arrives for Francesca and just kind of kills the mood, really. So Lord Sterling leaves to not interfere, which made me sad. Francesca and her mother out shopping, and John Sterling is just like kind of there on the street, and so Francesca goes up to him, and he says that he is not often at society events because he just doesn't want to be there unless it's required. So there are musicians on the street, and he says that it's lovely, but she says that it's not really like what she likes, and kind of suggests how it would be better. And he walks off, and in a later scene we see that he gives her the sheet music with the arrangements that she had suggested, which was just the most precious thing ever. And I am rooting for them so much. So Lord Devling had asked Penelope's mother for permission to ask Penelope's hand in marriage, and he would basically travel a lot and study, and literally he has one of the biggest homes like in the entire area, and she would only really have to manage his estate while he is away, and then obviously like have children with him when the time came. And Penelope's like, oh, I want to marry for love, even though I want my privacy. I'm like, girl, you won't even have to see the man. And you're like, nah. Another iconic moment from her mother too, which just proved my point that she is the icon of this season, where she's like, do you know what's romantic? Security. And I'm like, yes, because I know that she's waiting for Colin and everything, but Colin wouldn't even like be a Viscount. I don't even know what his title would be. Like, you can't survive or eat off of love. Like, get that man's pockets and write your columns so you can also just make your own money. Like, come on. Get with it, Penelope. I will do it. I want to switch places. I will do it. I will marry Lord Devling, like, in a second. But the Bridgertons are heading off to another ball, and Colin tells his mother that he is going to stay behind. So we have another typical iconic Violet moment where she basically says that he has been living to please other people, and that he must be careful to not let his ways settle to the point where it's hard for him to open up. and she reveals that he will miss Penelope possibly getting proposed to tonight, which obviously catches his attention. And to circle back to like what she had said, I'm like, when in this entire season has he been like living to please somebody else? Even like really in the other 2 seasons. I just didn't see that, but whatever. I would like examples and receipts, please, and thank you. I seem like such a Colin hater, you guys. I swear I'm not, but this season is just throwing me off for some reason. I know that we have like 4 more episodes to go, but these first 4, I'm fighting for my life over here. I'm so sorry. I promise I'm not a Colin hater. Maybe a little bit, but not too much. But at the ball, we have this like contemporary dance scene, which I don't even know if this type of dance was already like happening at the moment, if it was accurate, but if it is, cool, whatever. And then Queen Charlotte's wig, by the way, in this season, literally iconic. It has like a rotating glass swan inside of it. Are you joking? Rotating glass swan inside of the wig. Come on. So Colin is still at his house, like basically pouting when he changes his mind and decides to go off to the ball. And Francesca is dancing with Lord Samadani, and when they are done, John Sterling rushes up to her to give her the sheet music arranged like she had asked for. And it's just the cutest thing ever. Like, he is just literally speaking her language, and she is just receiving it so well, and she's just seen so well by him, and I love it. And I know that there was some discussion on social media about whether or not Francesca was neurodivergent, and even though it's not confirmed in the books, because I tried to like research and see, the showrunner did not say otherwise in interviews, and has kind of embraced the fact that neurodivergent people are seeing themselves in Francesca, because I know in the book she's seen as pretty introverted and quiet and reserved, but I think here in the show they kind of highlight her special interest in music and the way she just kind of likes to be on her own and doesn't really like loud spaces or large crowds, and also just the way that she talks about and how she sees music. She's very analytic about it. So I definitely can see how people are referencing that and like identifying with it. And if they're going to play more on it the rest of the season and bring that representation, I would love to see it, honestly. And to be honest, I just hope they take notes of people's reactions as far as that goes. So yeah, I think it'd be lovely to see if that was actually the case. So Prudence and Philippa are finally pregnant, and they are both showing clear signs of it, which I just found iconic, that they were just pregnant at the same time after their mother having to basically teach them like how to get pregnant and participate in relations with their husbands, I guess, because they had like no idea how to do so before. But Colin arrives at the ball and ignores his friends as they ask him to join them at this bar that they're going to, and Penelope is dancing with Lord Debling, and she asks if he thinks love could grow in his marriage due to his constant travels, and he says that his travels do take up a lot of his time, so he doesn't know if it would, but he is glad that she basically has a life of her own to occupy her time. And Colin literally walks up to them and interrupts them like mid-dance. I'm like, sir, disrespectful, first of all. And so Cressida swoops in to dance with Lord Debling as he is exiting the dance floor. And Penelope tells Colin that he is going to ruin things for her, and he's like, you can't marry him, you barely know him, and he's leaving for like 3 years. Like, I didn't see you objecting before, but anyway. In the meantime, Cressida tells Debling that Penelope lives across the street from the Bridgertons, which I guess he now realizes that she is always looking out the window, and he asks her that as he is leaving. But he asks if they have feelings for one another, but she says that it's not possible, that they are friends, and he's like, no, I didn't ask if that was a possibility. I asked like if you actually had feelings for him. So Penelope is leaving the ball and he is running after her. She's getting into the carriage, like literally gets into it, and I'm like, come on. So in true Bridgerton fashion, we have this confession in the midst of an argument where Colin basically reveals that he has feelings for her and that he has not been able to stop thinking about her, that he dreams of her, and she thinks that he doesn't mean it, but he's like, nope, I mean it. And she says that she wants them to be more than friends, and I'm like, girl, stand the fuck up. Like, be released from the shackles of Colin Bridgerton, please. My God. But they kiss, and he basically fingers her in the carriage, and it was hot, I'm not gonna lie. But the whole time I was like, y'all are unchaperoned, and your driver is listening to all this going on in this carriage right now. Like, what if someone sees you guys, or hears you, as you're traveling through town? But when they stop their shenanigans, it's cute because they're laughing together at like the heat of the moment of what just happened. So I will give it to them. That moment was cute. But as he is getting out of the carriage, he is like, are you going to marry me or not, Penelope Featherington? I'm like, my God, okay, talk about a cliffhanger. So it basically ends there, and we have to wait until June 13th to see what else goes on with these people. And I'm like, my God, what a roller coaster. But yeah, I just feel like I had lots of opinions and feelings about this because it just felt so different from the past couple of seasons for some reason. So yeah, I guess we'll just have to see what happens in the end and how they end up getting married, like what happens with that, if he finds out she's Lady Whistledown, his reaction to that or anything, because like I said, I have not read the book, so I don't know anything. But yeah, I am interested to see how this pans out. Let me know like what your thoughts are about this season so far. I know I had a lot of them. But yeah, stay tuned for next week. I think I am going to try my hardest and my best to finally get A Court of Mist and Fury out, because it's been a month since I read the book and I was meaning to do it like for the longest time, and I just could not. I just kept putting it off, and I think it's about that time so I can actually like continue the series or actually do a different book. I don't know. We will see. But I think that's going to be probably my next episode. I'm really, really, really going to try. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and like and subscribe if you want to watch the rest of my Bridgerton episodes. I will have those listed, and also just on my channel and in my podcast profile. Yeah, stay tuned for June 13th. I don't know what day of the week that is exactly, but I will try my best to have it up as soon as I can. I know I post episodes on Tuesdays, but I will try my best to have it up as soon as possible. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe, comment, leave a review, and rate this episode. And I will see you next week. Bye.